The morning I found out my son wasn't mine, I was standing in my lawyer's office holding the DNA test that would destroy everything I believed for 35 years. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. Not from age, I'm 73, and my hands are steady as steel when they need to be. They shook because in that moment I understood that the two people I loved most in this world had been lying to me since the day that boy was born. My wife, my twin brother. 35 years of Christmas mornings, baseball games, graduation photos, all of it built on a lie so deep it took my breath away. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you die for, you'll understand what I'm about to tell you. Hit that like button if you know that pain. Subscribe if you want to hear how a man survives when his whole life turns out to be fiction. And drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. Because misery loves company, and I need to know I'm not alone in this. My name is Cornelius James Walker. Folks call me CJ. I'm from Shreveport, Louisiana, but this story happened in Houston, Texas, where I built my empire and lost my soul. I was 38 when it started, young enough to be foolish, old enough to know better. This is my confession. I still remember the weight of Marcus in my arms the first time I held him. 7 pounds, 3 ounces of pure possibility. The nurse had to practically pry him from me because I couldn't stop staring at his face, searching for myself in those tiny features. "He's got your nose," everyone said. "Your mama's eyes," they claimed. Looking back now, I see what I wanted to see, not what was actually there. That's how love works. It makes you blind to the truth sitting right in front of your face. My wife Loretta was exhausted, her hair matted with sweat, but she'd never looked more beautiful to me. We'd been trying for 5 years. 5 years of doctors, prayers, and disappointment. Then suddenly, like a miracle, she was pregnant. My twin brother Clarence was there that night, pacing the waiting room with me. We were identical in every way. Same walk, same laugh, same stubborn streak that got us in trouble since we were boys. Our mama used to dress us in different colors just so teachers could tell us apart. But where I was steady, Clarence was wild. Where I saved money, he spent it. Where I married young and stayed faithful, Clarence ran through women like water. He held Marcus that night too, and I swear I saw something in his eyes, a flicker of something I couldn't name. "Beautiful boy," he said, handing him back quick. Too quick, maybe. But I was too happy to notice the way Loretta couldn't meet his eyes, or how she flinched when he congratulated her. The house on Telephone Road wasn't much, but it was ours. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, and a backyard big enough for the swing set I installed before Marcus could even walk. I worked construction then, breaking my back in the Houston heat to give my family everything. Clarence worked the same sites when he felt like it, which wasn't often. But he was blood, and in our family, blood meant everything. Sunday dinners at our mama's house were mandatory. Loretta would make her famous cornbread. Clarence would show up late with some new woman, and Mama would fuss over Marcus like he was the second coming. "This baby gonna be somebody," she'd say, kissing his forehead. I feel it in my bones. She was right about that, just not in the way any of us expected. Those early years blur together now. First steps in our living room, first words, Dada, came before Mama, and I was so proud. First day of school where Marcus cried so hard they had to call me from work. I built my construction company one contract at a time, saving every penny for Marcus's college fund. Loretta worked as a teacher's aide, coming home tired, but always with energy for our boy. We were building something real, something lasting, or so I thought. Every sacrifice felt worth it because we were creating a legacy. The Walker name would mean something in Houston. My son would inherit not just money, but respect, reputation, and roots that ran deep as the Buffalo Bayou. But even then, there were signs I chose not to see. The way Loretta would get quiet when Clarence came around. How she'd suddenly need to run errands whenever he stopped by. The way Marcus would sometimes tilt his head a certain way, and for just a second, I'd see my brother instead of myself. But denial is a powerful drug, and I was addicted to the life I thought I had. That first night in the hospital holding my son, I made him a promise. "Daddy's going to give you the world," I whispered. "Everything I got is yours." 35 years later, I'd keep that promise, just not the way I intended. By the time Marcus turned 5, Walker Construction had 12 employees and more work than we could handle. Houston was booming in the early 90s, and I was smart enough to ride that wave. Every nail I hammered, every contract I signed, I did it thinking about Marcus's future. Private school wasn't cheap, but my boy deserved the best. Loretta wanted to move to a bigger house in a better neighborhood, and I made it happen. A 2-story colonial in 3rd Ward with a pool out back. The day we moved in, Marcus ran through every room laughing, his voice echoing off the empty walls. "This is ours, Daddy," he kept asking. "All of it?" "Yeah, baby boy, all of it." Everything I touched turned to gold in those days. But gold can't buy you the truth. Clarence started coming around more once he saw the money flowing. He'd show up at job sites talking about how he needed work, how families should stick together. And fool that I was, I hired him. Gave him a supervisor position he didn't earn, a company truck he didn't deserve. "You're too soft on him," my foreman Eddie would say. "Man needs to earn his keep." But Clarence was my twin, my other half. When we were kids, we'd split everything down the middle. Candy bars, whoopings, dreams about getting out of the 5th Ward. How could I have everything while he had nothing? That's not how brotherhood works. At least that's what I told myself every time he showed up late. Every time materials went missing. Every time I caught him sleeping in the truck instead of working. Sunday dinners got more complicated as Marcus grew. He was a quiet kid, thoughtful in a way that reminded me of my daddy. But sometimes, when Clarence had a few drinks in him, he'd say things. "Boy's got an arm on him." He'd comment after watching Marcus throw a football in the yard. "Must get that from his." Then he'd catch himself, take another swig of beer. Loretta would go stone-faced, start clearing dishes that didn't need clearing. "From his daddy," I'd finish, proud as could be. "Boy's gonna play for the Oilers one day. Watch." Clarence would just nod, that strange look in his eyes again. Our mama noticed it too. "You two need to work out whatever's between you," she'd say. But how do you work out something when you don't even know what it is? The truth is, I was too busy building an empire to see the cracks in my foundation. By Marcus's 10th birthday, Walker Construction was the 3rd largest black-owned construction company in Houston. I had contracts with the city, the school district, even some of those big oil companies. Loretta drove a Mercedes. Marcus went to St. John's School with the mayor's kids. We'd made it, or at least it looked like we had. But success is funny. The higher you climb, the further you got to fall. And I was climbing fast, dragging my whole family up with me, not realizing that Clarence was sawing at the ladder rungs below me. Every bonus I gave him, every excuse I made for his failures, every time I chose to trust instead of question, it all added up to a debt I didn't know I was accumulating. The day Marcus graduated from elementary school, Clarence didn't show up. "Probably drunk somewhere," Mama muttered, but Loretta looked relieved. Marcus didn't seem to notice. He was too excited about starting middle school, about growing up. After the ceremony, he hugged me tight and said, "Thanks for everything, Dad." Those words hit different now, knowing what I know. But that day, standing in that school auditorium with my beautiful wife and brilliant son, I felt like the richest man in Texas. Clarence called that night, some excuse about car trouble. I told him it was fine. Family forgives. "You're a good man, CJ," he said, and his voice sounded strange, almost sad. "Better than I deserve as a brother." I should have heard the confession in those words, should have recognized the guilt. But I was too busy being the good man he said I was. Marcus hit his teenage years like a force of nature. Straight A's, varsity basketball, volunteer work at our church. The boy was everything I dreamed and more. College recruiters started sniffing around by his junior year. Rice, UT, even some Ivy League schools. Your boy's special, his principal told me. Full ride wherever he wants to go. I'd built Walker Construction into a $10 million company by then, with 40 employees and a reputation that opened doors all over Texas. But nothing I'd built compared to the pride I felt watching Marcus walk across that stage at graduation, valedictorian of his class. Loretta cried. I cried. Even Clarence showed up sober and on time, wearing the suit I'd bought him for the occasion. The night before Marcus left for Harvard, because of course my boy got into Harvard, we sat on the back porch, just him and me. The Houston humidity wrapped around us like a blanket, cicadas singing their summer song. Dad, he said, and his voice had that careful tone kids get when they're about to say something heavy. I need you to know how grateful I am for everything. I laughed, told him to save the speeches for his college essays, but he shook his head. No, I mean it. You didn't have to. He stopped, started again. You're the best father anyone could ask for. Looking back, I wonder if he knew even then, if maybe Loretta had told him something, or if blood has a way of recognizing itself. But that night, I just hugged my boy and told him what I'd been telling him since he was born. Everything I got is yours, son. Always has been, always will be. Clarence got worse after Marcus left. The drinking that used to be social became solitary. He'd show up to job sites reeking of whiskey, start arguments with the crew. I covered for him, made excuses, sent him home with pay. Why do you keep enabling him? Eddie asked me one day. Man's grown, let him fail. But I couldn't. We'd shared a womb, shared a childhood, shared dreams of making something of ourselves. How could I succeed while watching him drown? So I threw him rope after rope, not realizing he was using them to hang me. Loretta and I started fighting about it. He's taking advantage of you, she'd say. He's family, I'd respond, ending the conversation. She'd get this look then, like she wanted to say something else, something important. But she never did. Marcus's freshman year at Harvard was everything we'd hoped. Dean's List, pre-law track, already talking about coming back to Houston to help run the family business after law school. I flew up for Parents' Weekend that fall, walked around campus like I owned the place. My son was at Harvard. This boy from 3rd Ward, whose daddy started with nothing but a hammer and a prayer, was walking the same halls as presidents and CEOs. I must have told everyone I met that Marcus was my son. The other parents smiled politely, probably wondering what a rough-looking construction worker was doing there. If only they knew I could buy and sell half of them. But money wasn't the point. Legacy was. And Marcus was going to be a lawyer, maybe a judge, maybe even more. The Walker name wasn't just going to be on construction sites anymore. It was going to be on courthouses, on legislation, on history. Then came Thanksgiving, and everything shifted. Marcus came home different, quieter, more distant. He'd look at me sometimes like he was trying to solve a puzzle. Clarence didn't come to dinner that year, claimed he was sick. Loretta barely ate, pushed food around her plate like it might bite her. What's wrong with everyone? I asked. We got everything we ever wanted. Marcus is at Harvard, business is booming, we're blessed. That's when Marcus set down his fork and said, Dad, do you ever wonder about things you don't know? Like secrets people keep? The question hung in the air like smoke. Son, in my experience, secrets have a way of coming out when they're meant to, I said. Truth always finds its way home. He nodded slowly, exchanged a look with his mama that I pretended not to see. After that weekend, Marcus stopped calling as much. When he did, our conversations felt scripted, like he was reading from a card. How's school? Fine. You need anything? No, sir. The boy who used to talk my ear off about everything suddenly had nothing to say. I told myself it was normal. College changes kids, makes them independent. But Loretta knew better. She'd sit by the phone on Sunday nights waiting for his call, and when it didn't come, she'd go to bed early. "He's pulling away," she said one night, "from both of us." I held her while she cried, promised her it was just a phase. But phases don't last 17 years, and that's how long Marcus stayed distant, cordial but cold, until the day everything exploded. By the time Marcus finished law school, Walker Construction was worth $30 million. We had government contracts, commercial developments, even some residential subdivisions. I'd bought Mama a house in River Oaks before she passed, gave Clarence a position as special projects manager that basically meant I paid him 6 figures to stay out of the way. Marcus came back to Houston like he promised, but he joined a downtown firm instead of the family business. "I need to make my own name first," he said. I respected that, even if it hurt. What I didn't respect was how he found excuse after excuse to miss Sunday dinners, family gatherings, anything that put him in the same room as me for too long. Loretta's health started declining around Marcus's 30th birthday. Nothing dramatic at first. Headaches, fatigue, forgetting little things. The doctors ran tests, found nothing, said it was stress. Stress from what? We had everything. But she'd sit in her garden for hours, staring at nothing, like she was having conversations with ghosts. "What are you thinking about?" I'd ask. "Old sins," she'd say, then laugh like it was a joke. But her eyes weren't laughing. They were drowning. I'd catch her on the phone sometimes, whispering urgent words that would stop the moment I walked in. "Who was that?" "Nobody." Wrong number. 40 years of marriage, and suddenly we were strangers sharing a house. Clarence surprised everyone by getting sober that year. Just showed up one day, clear-eyed and steady-handed, talking about making amends. AA had given him a list of people to apologize to, and I was at the top. "I'm sorry for taking advantage," he said, "for not being the brother you deserved." I hugged him, told him family doesn't need apologies, but he pulled back, looked me in the eye. "Yes, they do. Some things need to be said." He started to say something else, then stopped. "When the time is right," he muttered. "When the time is right." He started coming around more, but different, helpful, present, sober. He'd look at Marcus during the few family dinners our son attended, and that old strange expression would cross his face. But now it looked less like guilt and more like grief. The plan was always to transfer the company to Marcus when he turned 35. It was a tax thing, a legal thing, but also a symbolic thing. 35 was when I'd started the company, when I'd laid the first brick of what would become our empire. Marcus would be ready by then, established in his career, maybe married with kids of his own. But 35 was approaching, and Marcus was still single, still distant, still treating me like a casual acquaintance instead of his father. "Talk to your son," I told Loretta. "Find out what I did wrong." She got that drowning look again. "You didn't do anything wrong, CJ. That's what makes this so hard." I didn't understand what she meant then. God help me. I understand now. The week of Marcus's 35th birthday, I had my lawyer draw up the transfer papers. Walker Construction would become his, lock, stock, and barrel. $30 million, a legacy, a future. I planned to surprise him at his birthday dinner, make a big speech about fathers and sons, about building something that lasts. Clarence helped me plan it, said he'd make sure Marcus showed up. "It's time," he kept saying. "Time for everything to come out right." I thought he meant the company transfer. Loretta thought different. The night before the dinner, she came to me with tears streaming down her face. "I need to tell you something," she said. "Before tomorrow, I need to tell you something." But then she started hyperventilating, clutching her chest. The ambulance came, said it was a panic attack. They sedated her, kept her overnight for observation. So she wasn't there when my world ended. Maybe that was God's mercy. Or maybe it was just another layer of cruel. Marcus showed up to his birthday dinner 20 minutes late, wearing a suit that costs more than most people's cars, but looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. Clarence was already there, stone cold sober, but sweating like he'd run a marathon. The private room at Brennan's was perfect, elegant, intimate, the kind of place where you celebrate victories. I had the transfer papers in my briefcase, the speech in my head, and 35 years of love in my heart. "Son," I started, but Marcus held up his hand. "Dad, before you say anything, I need to tell you something. I've needed to tell you for 17 years. My stomach dropped, but I nodded. Whatever it was, we'd work through it. That's what families do. "I know about Uncle Clarence," he said, and the words hung there like a death sentence. Clarence made a sound like someone had punched him in the gut. "What about him?" I asked, but my voice sounded far away, like it was coming from someone else. Marcus pulled out an envelope, worn from years of handling. "Mom gave this to me on my 18th birthday, said I deserved to know the truth about who I am." My hands shook as I took it. Inside was a letter in Loretta's handwriting and a DNA test. The kind you can buy at CVS now, but back then cost a fortune. The results were clear as day. Probability of paternity, 0%. Then below it, another test. Cornelius Walker, 0%. Clarence Walker, 99.9%. The room started spinning, but I kept reading Loretta's confession, each word a nail in the coffin of my life. It happened the month before she got pregnant, when I was in Dallas for 3 weeks setting up our first out-of-town contract. She was lonely. Clarence was there. He looked just like me, sounded just like me, but he paid attention in ways I'd forgotten to. One night, too much wine, too much loneliness, too much of everything except good sense. She realized she was pregnant 6 weeks later, did the math, prayed it was mine, convinced herself it had to be mine. But as Marcus grew, she saw Clarence in him, not me, my twin, but Clarence specifically. The way he held his shoulders, the shape of his hands, that tilt of his head. She'd planned to take it to her grave, but Marcus had started asking questions, noticing things. So she told him on his 18th birthday, made him promise not to tell me. "Your father, the man who raised you, he's your real father in every way that counts," she'd written. "But you deserve to know where you come from." 17 years, I said, my voice barely a whisper. "You've known for 17 years. Marcus nodded, tears streaming down his face. "I didn't know how to tell you. You were so proud, so happy, and I was so angry. At Mom, at him," he pointed at Clarence, "at the whole situation. But mostly I was angry at myself for not being able to pretend anymore. Every time you called me son, every time you talked about the family legacy, it felt like a knife twisting." Clarence finally spoke, his voice broken. "CJ, I'm sorry. God knows I'm sorry. It was the worst mistake of my life. I've been trying to make it right, but there's no making this right." The waiter knocked, probably wondering why we hadn't ordered. I told him we were done, that the dinner was over. Everything was over. I stood up, picked up my briefcase with the transfer papers that would never be signed. 35 years, I said. Every sacrifice I made, every dream I had, every prayer I prayed over that boy was for my son. But he was never my son, was he? Marcus reached for me, but I pulled away. "Dad, please, don't," I said. "Don't call me that. Not now. Maybe not ever." I looked at Clarence, my twin, my other half, the man who'd taken everything while I was busy giving him more. You were in the delivery room. You held him that night. You knew. Both of you knew, and you let me love him like he was mine. Clarence started to speak, but I was already walking out. The last thing I heard was Marcus crying, calling after me. But I kept walking. What else could I do? I drove around Houston for hours that night, past every job site I'd ever worked, every building I'd ever built. All of it was supposed to be for Marcus, for my son. But I didn't have a son. I had a nephew I'd raised, a brother who'd betrayed me, and a wife who'd been dying of guilt for 35 years. When I finally got home, Loretta was back from the hospital, sitting in the dark living room. "You know," she said. It wasn't a question. How long have you known? I asked. Always, she whispered. Part of me always knew. But I loved you so much and I wanted us to have a family so badly. I convinced myself it didn't matter. That love was enough. But love isn't enough when it's built on lies. Love needs trust to survive, and ours had been dead for 35 years. We just hadn't known it. The next morning, I called my lawyer. Not about the transfer, that was dead, but about my will. I want to change everything, I said. Harold Finch had been my attorney for 20 years, seen me through contracts worth millions, but he'd never heard me sound like this. CJ, what happened? I found out Marcus isn't my biological son, hasn't been for 35 years. The silence on the other end stretched so long I thought we'd been disconnected. Dear God, he finally said, what do you want to do? What I wanted was to turn back time, to unknow what I knew. But since that wasn't possible, I did the next best thing. I decided to give everything to the only innocent party in this mess. I have a nephew, Clarence's son James, from that woman in Baton Rouge. He's 25, works construction like his daddy should have. I want everything to go to him. Loretta moved into the guest room without me asking. We lived like ghosts in that big house, passing each other without speaking. She'd cook dinner, leave my plate in the microwave. I'd pay the bills, leave her credit cards on the counter. 40 years of marriage reduced to transactions. Marcus called every day for 2 weeks straight. I never answered. He came by the house. I wouldn't open the door. He sent letters. I returned them unopened. Clarence tried once, showed up drunk despite his sobriety, crying on my porch at 2 a.m. I ruined everything, he kept saying. I ruined my brother's life. I let him cry himself out, then told him to leave and never come back. We're not brothers anymore, I said. Brothers don't do what you did. Work became my escape in my prison. I threw myself into contracts, staying at job sites until midnight, sleeping in my office. But everywhere I looked, I saw Marcus. The elementary school we'd built when he was in 5th grade, the community center where he'd played basketball, the church where he'd been baptized. I'd built half of Houston with my bare hands, thinking I was creating something for my son to inherit. Instead, I'd built monuments to my own foolishness. Eddie noticed the change. Boss, you okay? You've been different lately. How do you explain that your whole life was a lie? That the American dream you'd built turned out to be a nightmare? Family troubles was all I said. He nodded like he understood. But nobody could understand this. 3 months after the dinner, James called me. Clarence's actual son, the one he'd abandoned when the boy was 2. Uncle CJ, I heard about everything. I'm sorry. This kid I'd seen maybe 5 times in his whole life was calling to comfort me. Daddy told me what he did. It's unforgivable. Something in his voice, the sincerity, the pain for a pain that wasn't even his, broke something in me. You still working construction? I asked. Yes, sir. Just like you taught me that summer I stayed with y'all. I remembered. Marcus had been at summer camp, and Clarence had dumped James on us for 2 weeks. I'd taken him to job sites, shown him how to read blueprints, how to measure twice and cut once. You want to learn the business for real? I asked. The actual business, not just the labor. His silence told me he understood what I was really asking. Uncle CJ, I can't take what was meant for Marcus. It was meant for my son, I said. I don't have a son. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was giving my legacy to Clarence's son, just not the one I'd raised. But James was innocent in all this, a good kid who'd grown up without a father because Clarence was too busy playing daddy to mine. No, not mine. To his own son with my wife. The thought still made me sick. Loretta found out about the will change when Harold's assistant accidentally called the house phone instead of my cell. The screaming match that followed was 35 years in the making. You can't punish Marcus for our mistakes. Our mistakes? Our mistakes. I didn't sleep with my spouse's sibling. You were never here. Always working. always building, always focused on the future instead of the present. I was building a future for our family. What family? The one based on a lie? That's on you, not me! Round and round we went until we were both exhausted, sitting on opposite ends of the couch we'd bought together when Marcus was born. I loved you, she said finally. Both of you. Is that so wrong? Yes, I said. When you don't choose, when you lie, when you let me raise another man's son as my own, yes, it's wrong. 6 months passed. Houston's summer hit like God's own furnace, and I spent most of it teaching James the business. The boy was smart, eager, everything Clarence could have been if he'd applied himself. Why are you doing this for me? James asked one day over blueprints. Because blood should mean something, I said, even when it doesn't mean what you thought. He understood I wasn't just training him. I was replacing Marcus systematically, deliberately, publicly. Word got around. Houston's black business community is small and gossip travels fast. Heard you got a new protege, folks would say. What about Marcus? Marcus is pursuing his own path, I'd answer, which was true enough. He'd made partner at his firm, youngest in the company's history. I heard about it from Eddie, who'd heard from someone else. My son, my nephew, was succeeding without me, just like I'd succeeded without a father. Maybe that was fitting. Clarence had a heart attack that September. Mild, they said, but enough to land him in Houston Methodist for a week. James called me from the hospital. He's asking for you. Tell him to ask for God's forgiveness, not mine. But I went anyway, at 3 a.m. when I knew visiting hours were over and I could sneak in. He looked old, older than me, though we'd shared the same womb, the same birthday, once upon a time the same dreams. You came, he whispered. I'm not staying. CJ, I need to tell you something else. There's nothing else that could possibly matter. Marcus isn't my only son. The words hit like cold water. What? Remember Denise? From high school? I remembered. My first girlfriend, the one who'd broken my heart senior year when she suddenly moved to Dallas. She was pregnant with your child. Her parents made her leave, give it up for adoption. I stared at him, waiting for the punchline. I'm telling you now because secrets have a way of destroying everything. I kept one secret for 35 years and look what it cost us. Don't let there be any more. I hired a private investigator the next day. It took him 3 weeks to find her, Denise Williams, now Denise Patterson, living in Atlanta with her husband of 30 years. No kids. The investigator found the adoption records too. A girl, born April 15th, 1969, given to a family in Chicago. Do you want me to keep digging? He asked. Did I? I was 55 years old, had just lost the son I'd raised, and now might have a daughter I'd never known. Find her, I said. Her name was Sarah. Dr. Sarah Coleman, pediatric surgeon at Northwestern Memorial Hospital. Married, 3 kids, living the kind of life I'd wanted for Marcus. She had my mama's eyes. I could see it even in the grainy photograph the investigator provided. Does she know she's adopted? I asked. Yes. She's never searched for her biological parents, though. Some people don't want to know. But I wanted to know. After losing Marcus, I needed to know that somewhere in this world I had blood that was actually mine. I wrote her a letter, rewrote it 20 times. How do you introduce yourself to a daughter who doesn't know you exist? In the end, I kept it simple. My name is Cornelius Walker. I recently discovered that I may be your biological father. I didn't know about you until last month. If you're willing, I'd like to know you. If not, I understand and will respect your wishes. I included a photo of me at her age, standing in front of my first construction site. 2 weeks later, my phone rang. Mr. Walker? This is Sarah. I got your letter. Her voice was professional, careful, but underneath I heard something else. Curiosity, maybe even hope. I've been thinking about searching for years, but I was afraid. My parents, my adoptive parents, they're wonderful. I didn't want them to think they weren't enough. Family isn't about enough or not enough, I said, thinking of Marcus. It's about truth. And the truth is, you're my daughter, and I'd like to know you if you'll let me. We met in Dallas, neutral ground for both of us. She looked like my mama so much it took my breath away. Same proud posture, same careful way of considering her words before speaking. Tell me about my biological mother, she said over coffee. So I told her about Denise, about young love and dreams deferred. And you really didn't know? Not until last month, my brother. I stopped. How do you explain Clarence Marcus, the whole twisted mess? It's complicated, I said finally. She smiled, and it was my smile, the one I'd seen in mirrors for 55 years. I'm a surgeon. I specialize in complicated. So I told her everything. About Marcus, about Loretta, about Clarence, about building an empire for a son who wasn't mine, while a daughter I didn't know existed was building her own life in Chicago. That's a lot, she said when I finished. Too much, I asked. No, just enough. Enough to understand that finding me isn't about replacing him, it's about finding what's real. Sarah came to Houston for Thanksgiving. It was just the two of us. Loretta had gone to her sister's, Marcus was God knows where, and Clarence was still recovering from his heart attack. I cooked my mama's recipes, told Sarah stories about her grandmother she'd never meet. She would have loved you, I said. A doctor in the family? She would have told everyone at church, the grocery store, random strangers on the street. Sarah laughed, and it sounded like home. We talked about her kids, my grandchildren, though the word felt foreign in my mouth. Her husband was a good man, a professor at University of Chicago. They'd built a beautiful life without me, but somehow there was still room for me in it. I want my kids to know you, she said, to know where they come from. They come from survivors, I told her, from people who build things that last. James was running 2 job sites by December, proving himself worthy of the legacy I was preparing to leave him. But watching him work, I saw Clarence, not the drunk, broken Clarence of recent years, but the young man who'd once had potential. You're not your father, I told him one day. I know, he said, but I'm trying to be the man he could have been. There was wisdom in that, in taking the best of what you're given and leaving the rest. Marcus had done the same, I realized. He'd taken my work ethic, my ambition, my drive, and made them his own. The fact that we didn't share DNA didn't erase the 35 years of lessons, values, and love I'd poured into him. But knowing that and feeling it were 2 different things, and my heart wasn't ready to bridge that gap. The week before Christmas, Loretta had another panic attack. This time, they kept her 3 days. The doctors ran more tests, found her heart was weak, literally broken, they said, from chronic stress. You need to reduce the stress in your life, they told her. She laughed, bitter and short. The stress is my life. I sat with her one night while she slept, watching the monitors beep, remembering the young woman I'd married. She'd been so beautiful, so full of hope. We were going to conquer the world together. Instead, the world had conquered us. When she woke, she found me there. You came, she said, echoing Clarence's words from months before. You're still my wife, I said, for now. She nodded, understanding. I'm moving to Dallas after New Year's. My sister has room. I think we need to stop pretending there's anything left to save. She was right, but hearing it still hurt. 40 years, and this was how it ended. Not with screaming or drama, but with quiet acceptance of a death that had happened long ago. Marcus sent a Christmas card to the office. Inside, his handwriting careful and measured. Dad, I know you may never read this, but I need you to know. Every good thing in me came from you. Every lesson about hard work, integrity, and building something that matters, that was all you. Biology doesn't change that. You are my father in every way that counts. I love you, your son, because that's what I'll always be, Marcus. I read it 5 times, then put it in the safe with the important documents. Not ready to forgive, but not ready to throw it away either. Sarah called that night, her kids singing Jingle Bells in the background. "Merry Christmas, Dad," she said, and the word dad from her lips was like a gift I didn't know I needed. "Can we come for New Year's?" she asked. "I want the kids to see where you grew up, where their grandfather builds things." "I'd like that," I said and meant it. Clarence called too, drunk despite his heart attack, despite AA, despite everything. "I ruined Christmas," he slurred. "Every Christmas from now on, you'll think about what I did." He wasn't wrong, but as I listened to him cry over the phone, I realized something. He'd ruined his own life more than mine. I had Sarah now, James to carry on the business, my company still strong. What did he have? A son who couldn't look at him, a brother who wouldn't speak to him, and a heart that was literally failing from the weight of his choices. "Clarence," I said, "stop calling. Stop drinking. Stop making this about you. For once in your life, just stop." I hung up, blocked his number. Some bridges, once burned, don't deserve rebuilding. That New Year's Eve, Sarah and her family stood in my backyard, the same yard where Marcus had played, where I built his swing set, where I taught him to throw a football. Her kids ran around laughing, and for a moment I could pretend this was how it was always supposed to be. "Grandpa CJ," the oldest one said, "Mom says you build things. What's the biggest thing you ever built?" I thought about it. Buildings? Bridges? An empire? "A family," I said finally. "It might not look like I planned, but I built a family." Sarah squeezed my hand. In the distance, fireworks started exploding over Houston, and I thought about Marcus wherever he was, watching the same sky. My son who wasn't my son, my nephew who was more than a nephew. The heart doesn't care about DNA, I realized. It just cares about love, and despite everything, I still love that boy. Maybe that was the biggest truth of all. January 15th, the day that would have been my parents' 65th wedding anniversary. Everything came to a head. I was at the office reviewing contracts with James when Harold Finch called. "CJ, we have a problem. Marcus is contesting the will changes." My blood went cold. On what grounds? That you weren't of sound mind when you made them. That you were under emotional duress. He's got Loretta ready to testify that you've been acting erratically since discovering the truth. The betrayal hit fresh, like the wound had never even started healing. He's trying to take what I built. He's trying to claim what he sees as his inheritance. Says 35 years of being your son in every way that matters should count for something. Maybe it should. But right then, all I could feel was rage. I drove to Marcus's law firm, past security, straight to the conference room where I knew he'd be. He was standing at the window, looking out at the Houston skyline, the one I'd helped build. "You're contesting my will?" He turned, and for the first time in almost a year, we were face to face. He looked older, tired, worn down by the weight of everything. "I'm fighting for what you promised me my whole life," he said. "Everything you have was supposed to be mine. Not because of blood, but because I'm your son. You're Clarence's son." "No," he said, stepping forward. "I'm Clarence's biological offspring. But I'm your son. You taught me to tie my shoes, to ride a bike, to be a man. You were at every game, every graduation, every moment that mattered. That makes me your son." The words hit hard because they were true. But truth and feeling aren't the same thing. You knew for 17 years and said nothing. You let me live a lie. Because I loved you too much to break your heart. Because being your son was more important than being honest. I was wrong, but I was also 18 and terrified of losing the only father I'd ever known. The meeting got heated. Voices raised. Years of hurt and anger spilling out in that corporate conference room with its expensive furniture and floor-to-ceiling windows. "You want the money? Is that what this is about?" I shouted. "I want my father back," he shouted louder. "I want to stop being punished for something that happened before I was even born. I want you to see me, really see me, not as Clarence's mistake, but as your son." Security came, drawn by the yelling. Marcus's colleagues gathered in the hallway, watching Houston construction royalty fall apart in real time. "I'll fight you," I said. "I'll spend every penny I have before I let you take what I built." "What we built," Marcus corrected. "Every summer I worked those sites. Every college break, I was there. I know every contract, every client, every detail of Walker Construction because you taught me. That company has my sweat in it too, Dad. My blood." He stopped, realizing what he'd said. "Maybe not your blood," he continued quietly, "but my blood nonetheless." I left that office shaking, drove to the cemetery where Mama was buried, sat by her headstone like I used to when I was young and needed guidance. "What would you do, Mama?" I asked the stone. "Your grandson who's not your grandson, your son and his twin who betrayed everything." The wind picked up, rustling through the oak trees she'd loved. And I swear I heard her voice. "Family is what you make it, CJ. Blood or no blood, that boy was raised as yours. But knowing what's right and doing it are different things. The anger was too fresh, the betrayal too deep. I called Harold. Fight it. I don't care what it costs. James gets everything. CJ, think about this. A court battle will make everything public. Your family's business will be Houston's gossip for years. Then let them gossip. I've got nothing to hide anymore." But I did have something to hide. We all did. The lawsuit filing brought reporters, investigations, people digging into 35 years of family history. They found things. Clarence's DUIs, his debts I'd covered, the women he'd left broken across Houston. They found Loretta's prescription history, the anxiety medication that went back decades. They found Marcus's therapy records from when he was sealed but hinted at. "Prominent Houston family in turmoil," the Chronicle headline read. My phone rang off the hook. Clients worried about stability. Employees worried about their jobs. Everything I'd built to be strong and permanent was suddenly on shaky ground, all because the truth had finally found its way home. Eddie called me that night. "Boss, whatever's going on with your family, don't let it destroy what you've built. That company is bigger than any one person, even you." Sarah flew in from Chicago the next day, walked into my office like an angel of sense. "You're destroying everything," she said simply. "Your family, your legacy, yourself. And for what? Pride?" "For principle," I corrected. "The boy lived a lie." "The boy lived your truth," she shot back. "He was exactly who you raised him to be, successful, driven, principled. You're punishing him for being exactly what you taught him to be, just because he doesn't have your DNA. Do you know how lucky you are? Some people raise their biological children, and they turn out nothing like them. You raised another man's son, and he became everything you dreamed. That's not a tragedy, Dad. That's a triumph." She was right. My daughter I'd known for 4 months understood something I'd been too blind to see for a year. But I was too deep in my anger to climb out. The court hearing was set for February 1st. The night before, Clarence had another heart attack. This one was massive. James called me from the hospital. "He's dying, Uncle CJ. He wants to see you, both of you." I knew who both meant. I drove to Houston Methodist, found Marcus already there, standing outside Clarence's room like he couldn't decide whether to go in. We stood side by side, not talking, 2 men bound by a dying man's mistakes. "He's our father," Marcus said finally. "Biologically." "He's my brother," I said. "Genetically." We looked at each other, really looked, for the first time since that night at Brennan's. "I'm tired," Marcus said. "Tired of fighting, tired of being angry, tired of losing the only family I've ever known." "You have Clarence," I said, but the words tasted bitter. "No," Marcus replied. "I have you. I've only ever had you. He might have made me, but you made me who I am." We went in together. Clarence looked small in that hospital bed, machines keeping him alive. His eyes opened when he saw us. "My son," he wheezed, looking at Marcus. Then at me, my brother. He struggled to speak, each word an effort. "I wrote a letter for the court, the truth, all of it. How I pursued Loretta, how she tried to resist, how I took advantage when you were gone, how she begged me never to tell, how I let you raise my son because I was too broken to do it myself. He coughed, blood speckling his lips. I'm sorry doesn't fix anything, but I need you both to know, Marcus being yours, CJ, that wasn't a lie. That boy was yours from the first breath he took. I was just the donor. You were the daddy. Marcus was crying. I was crying. Even the nurses were crying. Clarence died at 3:17 a.m. holding both our hands. His last words were, "Take care of each other." We sat with his body until the sun came up, not talking, just being. 3 men reduced to 2, a family tree pruned by death. What now? Marcus asked as they wheeled Clarence away. Now we bury him, I said. Then we figure out the rest. The funeral was small, just family, what was left of it. Loretta came from Dallas, looking frailer than I'd ever seen her. Sarah flew in with her family. James gave the eulogy, talking about the father Clarence could have been, the uncle he sometimes was, the man who died trying to make amends. When they lowered him into the ground next to Mama, I felt something release in my chest. The anger, maybe, or just the weight of carrying it. After the funeral, Harold called. The court date. Cancel it, I said. I'm dropping the will contest. Marcus gets his inheritance. James gets a position in the company. Sarah gets her grandmother's house in River Oaks. Everyone gets something. You sure? I'm sure. Marcus was standing in my mama's living room when I got home, looking at old photos. This one, he said, holding up a picture from his 5th birthday. You taught me to ride a bike that day. I fell 17 times, but you wouldn't let me quit. Walkers don't quit, you kept saying. We might fall, but we get back up. You remember that? I remember everything, Dad. Every lesson, every moment, every time you chose to love me, even when I was difficult. That's why the last year hurt so much, because you were teaching me that love has conditions, that it can be revoked. That's not the man who raised me. We talked until sunrise, about Clarence, about Loretta, about the lie that had shaped our lives, but also about the truth, that love makes a family, not blood, that fathers are made in the showing up, not the DNA, that 35 years of being there meant more than one night of betrayal. I want you to run the company, I said, with James as your vice president. It's what I always planned, just different. Marcus nodded. What about you? I'm tired, son. I'm going to retire, spend time with Sarah and her kids, maybe travel, see something besides construction sites for once. We hugged then, really hugged, for the first time in over a year. It felt like coming home. Loretta and I divorced quietly that spring. No drama, no fighting, just 2 people acknowledging that some things, once broken, can't be fixed. She kept the Mercedes and moved permanently to Dallas. I kept the house but sold it, bought something smaller near Sarah's kids' school in Chicago. The distance helped. Houston held too many ghosts. Walker Construction thrived under Marcus and James. Turns out combining the ambition I'd instilled with the fresh perspective of youth was exactly what the company needed. They landed the airport expansion contract that summer, the biggest in company history. We did it, Dad, Marcus called to tell me. You did it, I corrected. I just laid the foundation. I'm 73 now, telling you this story from my apartment balcony in Chicago, watching Lake Michigan stretch out like God's own promise. Sarah's kids come by every Sunday. They call me Grandpa CJ and don't care one bit about DNA or family trees or who belongs to whom. They just know I love them, and that's enough. Marcus visits quarterly for business but stays for dinner. We rebuilt something, not what we had, but something new, something honest. James sends updates from Houston, photos of job sites and family barbecues. He named his first son Cornelius, after the man who showed me what a father really is, he said. Even Loretta and I found peace, eventually. We talk on holidays, remember the good times before they went bad. The truth about family, I learned, is that it's not about blood or lies or even honesty. It's about choosing to love when loving is hard. It's about forgiveness, not because people deserve it, but because you deserve peace. Marcus wasn't my biological son, but he was my son in every way that counted. Sarah was my biological daughter, but we had to choose to become family. James was my nephew by blood, but became my heir by choice. Clarence was my twin, my betrayer, and in the end, just a broken man who made unforgivable choices. But even he was family. Even he was loved. If you've made it this far in my story, you understand that sometimes the family you create is more real than the family you're born into. Sometimes the biggest betrayals lead to the greatest freedoms. Sometimes losing everything you thought you had helps you find everything you actually need. I built an empire thinking I was building it for my son. Turns out I was building it for all my children, the one I raised, the one I found, and the one I chose. Walker Construction still stands tall in Houston's skyline, but that's not my real legacy. My real legacy is this. 3 kids who call me dad, grandpa, uncle. 3 kids who learned that love is stronger than blood, that forgiveness is possible even when trust is broken, and that family, real family, is what you make it. That's my story. 73 years of living, 40 years of marriage, 35 years of lies, and finally, peace. If you're watching this from Houston, you might know the Walker name. If you're watching from anywhere else, you might know this pain. Either way, you know now that truth always finds its way home. Sometimes it destroys everything. Sometimes it sets you free. Sometimes, if you're lucky, it does both. Drop a comment if this story touched you. Tell me where you're watching from. Tell me about your own family truths, the ones that broke you and the ones that rebuilt you. Because in the end, we're all just trying to build something that lasts, whether it's with concrete and steel or love and forgiveness. I'm CJ Walker, and this was my confession. Thank you for listening. Thank you for witnessing. And remember, walkers don't quit. We might fall, but we get back up, even when getting back up takes a year, even when it means starting over at 72, even when the family we end up with looks nothing like the one we planned. God bless and good night.